I'm Liam. I'm a para-socialist. That word isn't in the Bible. It's in the popular lexicon of a niche corner of the internet, but that's about the only place you're going to find it. And that makes sense when you think about just how few people are actively thinking about the online left, right? Like, in anything but a dismissive sense, para-socialist is a word you use to categorize something you've considered. There's no real reason for most people to think about the online left. A much larger number of people have heard of para-socialism, but they don't use the word the way I do. They mean parasociality.
Your first parasocial relationship was between you and your teddy bear. Think about that.
Everyone knows about parasociality. When I talk about parasocialism, I'm talking about the online left. More or less. The goal of this video is to paint a picture of the online left as part of the broader cultural phenomenon of parasocialism. Also to introduce myself in this channel as an object of parasociality, and eventually to explain why all of this is worth thinking about. The short form version of that explanation, in case you wanted to cut to the chase, is that parasocialism can be categorized as what Raymond Williams and his inheritors have called a structure of feeling, which means that its significance hinges on its potential. Parasocialism is a structured technical network and an affective public. It is a pattern of impulses, restraints, tones. It is a group of people habitually engaging in a very particular way with the world, with all the effects that can have. It is where the wind is blowing. So if you want to listen to someone wax lyrical and academical about the social and philosophical significance of the online left, and I know exactly how tempting that proposition sounds, then let's talk about what we're doing here. This is a channel focused on the online left, mostly. When I talk about the online left, I'm thinking first about leftist content creators. Hassan Piker on Twitch, ContraPoints on YouTube, Chapo Trapos on RSS, throw A Up Lovely in there too for Twitter. The online left is a network of content creators performing for social media users. React streamers, video essayists, podcasters, posters, and others too. Anyone making leftist content on any part of the internet, they're all part of the online left. You may notice that all of these people have something in common. We'll come back to that. My first video is also about the online left, and the online left is the main component of parasocialism, but they're not the same thing. An online leftist is always a parasocialist, but a parasocialist is not always an online leftist. It's the ant-insect thing. This is actually a terrible metaphor. I'm not comparing ranks in a hierarchy. I'm talking about a part and a whole. The online left are the creators, while the parasocialists are the creators and consumers in broader context. Okay. Also, if I was going to use a picture of a bunch of different insects, I should really use it to illustrate the different kinds of creators that online leftists are. I like the bug metaphor for people who tend to avoid sunlight. Many of the other videos on this channel are going to be about particular parasocialists, and stick around till the end for me to plan that out. This video is about something broader, parasocialism. What it is, what it's doing, and why it's important. So, what is it? I could trot out dictionary definitions and etymologies and use them to explain exactly what the prefix para means, and I'm going to put a picture of Martin Heidegger up on the screen in a minute. I'm the kind of person who could do that. But I'm not going to do that, which is partly because it would be dishonest. I didn't sit down and derive this concept from first principles. I put Descartes before the horse. These are I'm fairly certain I first heard parasocialist on the Piker broadcasting service.
This is the part of the broadcast where I tell you a little bit about my personal news for all of my parasocialists out there. That's right.
I can't remember when.
For all my parasocialists out there.
I can't be certain it was Hassan.
This is a parasocialist experience that goes in either direction.
But I'm pretty certain it was Hassan. I'm in a pretty serious parasocial relationship with Hassan. Anyway, I heard the word parasocialist somewhere, and it lodged itself in my brain like a tadpole from Baldur's Gate 3, and it's since been forcing me to think deep thoughts about people like Vosh. I think it's a good word. It identifies something important and useful, more inclusive than the online left. And it's not hard to come up with a definition for it. The way I use it, a parasocialist is a social media user who has any sort of meaningful connection with a leftist content creator, or a leftist content creator who has any sort of meaningful connection with the social media users who make up their audience. Meaningful, very broadly defined. A parasocialist is someone who's invested in talking about politics online and whose discourse, in some sense, matters. But parasocialists aren't the same thing as parasocialism. Parasocialism means at least 3 different things. First, parasocialism is the basic material analysis of the world as it is filtered through the internet. It is an ideology, para-socialism. It is the online left. Ideology is a word with a lot of different meanings, and at the risk of being pedantic, I'm going to spell out how I'm using it. To start with, I'm talking about it narrowly in terms of what the online left believes, what their values are. I'm talking about a more or less specific political ideology, a more or less specific set of beliefs. Socialism. It's that or barbarism. I use that term pretty broadly because the online left is pretty broad. There are a lot of different content creators and they don't all agree. So I take the ideology of the online left to be something like what Mike Davis called old school socialism, loose and inclusive, but also attentive and responsible.
First, socialism, the belief that the earth belongs to labor, is my moral being. In fact, it is my religion, the values that anchor the commitments that define my life. Second, old school implies putting in work year after year for the good cause. In academia, one runs across people who call themselves Marxists and go to lots of conferences, but hardly ever march on a picket line, go to a union meeting, throw a brick, or simply help wash the dishes after a benefit. What's even worse, they deign to teach us the real Marx, but lack the old Moor's fundamental respect for individual working people and his readiness to become a poor outlaw on their behalf. Finally, plain socialist expresses identification with the broad movement and the dream rather than with a particular program or camp. I have strong, if idiosyncratic, opinions on all the traditional issues, but I try to remind myself that such positions need to be constantly reassessed and calibrated to the conjuncture. One is always negotiating the slippery dialectic between individual reason, which must be intransigently self-critical, and the fact that one needs to be part of a movement or a radical collective in order, as Sartre put it, to be in history. Moral dilemmas and hard choices come with the turf, and they cannot be evaded with correct lines.
The Mike Davis kind of socialism is ethical and theological. It's an injunction. Sharing is caring, Hassan would say. The alpha and omega of this particular quotation is just that. We should give each other the world. Marx makes the same point, incidentally.
The criticism of religion ends with the teaching that man is the highest essence for man. Hence, with the categoric imperative to overthrow all relations in which man is a debased, enslaved, abandoned, despicable essence, relations which cannot be better described than by the cry of a Frenchman when it was planned to introduce a tax on dogs. Poor dogs! They want to treat you as human beings.
If you have a moral commitment to other people, you also have a political commitment. You're sort of obliged to revolt. So that's the first way of talking about ideology. It's a political program. The second way of talking about ideology is broader. And you really can't do better for a nutshell definition than Zizek.
Ideology is not simply imposed on ourselves. Ideology is our spontaneous relationship to our social world, how we perceive its meaning, and so on and so on. We, in a way, enjoy our ideology.
This kind of ideology is something unconsciously shaping our experience of the world all the time. It's our background assumptions, it's habit, it's culture. It's definitely psychological, which means that it's inaccessible, at least without a lot of effort.
Put on the glasses.
Where unimaginative Marxists frame ideology as simple deception, wool pulled over in front of the eyes, something that class consciousness can wipe away, the more interesting critics Ask why the masses are so readily deceived. And then you go further into the critical stuff, you come at ideology from a bunch of other angles, and you get all kinds of complication and nuance. Ideology is a world picture. It's a world. It's one set of facts subjugating others. It's history. It's technology. It's infrastructure. And this kind of ideological pluralism makes sense, right? Ontology and epistemology aren't synonymous with ideology, but they're related. What the world is, how we understand the world, these are the things that ideology contests. Nothing is non-ideological, which means that you can approach ideology from a bunch of different perspectives. And you should. If you're an online leftist who wants to understand the world in order to change it, you should familiarize yourself with the different ways that politics rears its ugly head. And, conveniently, you can start to do that by watching good YouTube videos. The details you get from all these different approaches to ideology are interesting and useful, but for my purposes, most of them can be boiled off. I'm going to define the para-socialist ideology as the ethical commitments and epistemological convictions that undergird and circumscribe leftist political injunctions, consciously or not. What's right? What's true? What must be done? So, first, parasocialism is a set of beliefs. It's an ideology. And if you want to do a thorough job of explaining how an ideology works, you have to pay attention to its material conditions. In this case, you have to talk about the fact that it happens on the internet. So, second, parasocialism is the online left. The para part of parasocialism refers to the nodes and edges of the network, the social relations and their mediation by right-leaning platforms owned by the world's richest, evilest men. The online left's diagnosis of the world is shaped by its double relationship to these adversaries, to the structural constraints imposed by the medium and the platform, and to the online left's parasocial counterparts in the online right. The analyses and prescriptions of the online left are informed by the very particular ways in which people interact online. I tried to bundle all that up in a single paragraph, but that's a silly thing to do because there are, again, like a million things that go into thinking about how online communities interact with platforms. The political economy of the thing, to start with, is relatively straightforward, at least in that it's comparatively easy to follow the money.
Follow the money.
It's not like the ruling class is trying very hard to hide their crimes at the moment. But that presents a different kind of problem. There's just too much stuff to cut through. There's this gross, thick, writhing mess of corporations, think tanks, lobbyists, special interest groups, political action committees, and corrupt legislators out there in the open under the blatant control of a small minority of empty husk oligarch pedophiles, and they control basically everything, especially in social media. You can follow the money.
Follow the money.
There are people out there doing it, but there's a lot to follow. And it's not just the political economy you have to think about when it comes to the media, obviously. The media are an absurdly complicated object. You can't just think about them from just one perspective. When I think about parasocialism, I'm trying to keep political economy in mind, but I'm thinking about other approaches too. German cultural techniques, French semiotics, American communications, British cultural studies, Japanese postmodernism. But I'm Canadian, so I'm legally obliged to run this through Marshall McLuhan.
The medium is the message.
McLuhan and the McLuhanites, each of whom is doing their own very particular thing, all give you good ways to account for the tendencies and capacities of a social network like the online left. Like when I said that Twitch is an acoustic medium in the last video, that's an example of a Canadian approach to the media. The fact that people listen to a lot of their content is important because they're inhabiting space differently. Ambient consumption isn't the same as active consumption. People who listen are affected differently from those who sit down and focus. They're relating to the media differently in a really corporeal way. It's the medium that's determinant here. Podcast listeners have remarkably different capacities than, doing this with my left hand, doom scrollers, which means that they foster different kinds of relationships with their favorite content creators. Podcast listeners have more durable relationships with podcasters. Right? Like, it's easy for a certain kind of personality.
Once somebody's on the other side of the line, right? What does that mean for you?
A certain kind of voice.
Donald Trump is maybe starting to realize that Stephen Miller is causing him some political problems.
To find a receptive audience. And once that audience is listening, they're locked in a parasocial relationship with that personality for at least a couple of hours a week. The Democrats can't find the Joe Rogan of the left because they can't bear to listen to the same kinds of voices that most people actually want to hear.
All right, let me tell you what I've had it with.
This is the kind of thing I try to keep in mind when I think about social networks. They're complicated. All of these media, platform, genres, sites, apps, they all work differently. They have different affordances, and they're all inflected by the particular situation that they're in. All of this is to say that my approach here isn't especially well-bounded, because media defy boundaries. Parasocialism is a poorly bounded affective network. So, parasocialism is, first, an ideology. It's para-socialism. And second, it's a medium. It's para-socialism. Third, because of the intimate nature of mediation, parasocialism essentially involves parasociality. Leftist social networks entail para-socialism, which is to say that people consume leftist content because they like feeling close to a standing reserve of charming people with whom they agree. And people make leftist content partly because they want other people to feel close to them. You really cannot talk about parasocialism without acknowledging all this parasocial baggage. So, reflectively, 3 more things. First, this channel is admittedly me setting out with the explicit intention of becoming an instrument and object of parasociality. You don't make a YouTube channel unless you want to be watched. Second, this is my account of parasocialism, my account of the online left, my desire to be seen. It's biased. Like, look at the people I've highlighted so far. They're all white, and they're mostly men. I'm a cishet white guy with pretty conventional interests, and there's no shortage of online leftists with similar profiles for the algorithm to push my way, so this isn't a surprising state of affairs. I suspect it's pretty typical. This isn't to say, he rushed to add defensively, that I don't follow people who don't look like me, for whatever that's worth. But YouTube is structurally biased. That's the point. The algorithm knows that I'm a white guy with white guy interests, so it feeds me white guy content. This makes my perspective hegemonic, but not uninformative. Just redundant. Like, a broader description of the online left would be much less partial, much more representative, but you don't always want to do broad description. You don't want blunt tools if what you're doing is detail work. And I think what I'm doing, starting to make self-reflective video essays about things like video essays, is a kind of detail work. The challenge with this approach is to do the detail work without losing sight of the big picture or your significant blind sides. You have to zoom out every now and then if you want to get at least a little perspective. All of this is to say that I can't be conscious of all of my biases, and this is indeed a major limitation, but I can draw some conclusions about some topics with some confidence. And so can everyone else. It's completely possible to do your own research.
You guys ever do your own research about something? It rules.
As long as you do it with some modesty and the luck of the algorithm. I'm pivoting from the point about bias to a third point about judgment. I think people should be trusted to think for themselves, even on the internet. The prevailing wisdom is that the internet makes people stupid, insecure, narcissistic, and conservative, both because of the way that it's structured and the ways that it's used. It's really good at priming subjects for reactionary messaging and then pulling them to the right. That analysis is correct, but it misses countervailing factors, which is why I'm thinking about parasocialism. And it sometimes mischaracterizes the reasons for the success of the conservative media machine. People don't end up there only because they're hopelessly gullible, too stupid to see that they're being manipulated, too low IQ, too easily overpowered by propaganda, let alone because they're just bad. That's the case for some people, sure, but I don't buy the idea that people in general can't think for themselves. They can. They do. The waters of the information stream are hopelessly polluted, it's true, but average people don't lack the ability to judge. They just lack the capacity.
Mere bad behavior is not an indicator of true evil. Meanness is often a result of true humility that has been influenced by evil conditions, not the evilness of the person themselves.
The evil conditions of the media diminish capacities, but they don't eradicate faculties or drives. People might be judging wrong, but they're still judging. We shouldn't absolve them. We need to explain them. And the best way I know how to do that is by paying them really close attention, which is what the best of the parasocialists do, right? They pay really close attention to their objects of study. They think about them from every angle. They connect A and B, and it makes them think C, and then they set about explaining that to an audience. And they do it well because they're well attuned. They're in their own parasocial relationships with the subjects of their criticism. The quality of their research is a function of their parasociality. And even when they aren't at their best, parasocialists are still doing important things. They're still making culture.
I want to have like a kind of a conversation that reflects something like culturally. Oh God, when I talk this way.
And even if it is only very minor culture, it adds up. The stuff that happens way down the long tail isn't insignificant. All of the parasocialists are helping people think about the world. Which is to say, they're helping people judge. They're getting people to think about the world, decide how it should be, and talk to people about changing it. Parasocialism facilitates judgment. Parasocialists perform the kind of analytical and affective labor that helps people orient themselves in the world. It might be the most important thing they do. This is also to say that parasocialism is a populist project. Being a parasocialist means trusting that people can think for themselves. Most of the way. Okay, so where are we at? Let me rehearse the arguments so far. The online left is a loosely connected network of amateur content creators. It's React streamers, video essayists, podcasters, debate bros, politigrammers, TikTokers, anyone with an audience on a popular social media platform, generally in English. The content creators of the online left are significant in that they affect and are affected not only by their audiences or adversaries, but by the social, by everything. The online leftists themselves are connected by social networks to everything else. Parasocialism is the start of this everything else. At the beginning of the video, I defined a parasocialist as someone who's invested in talking about politics online and whose discourse in some sense matters. It's time to talk about how online discourse matters. I'm going to start at the personal level and then abstract out. I self-identify in the lamest form of self-identification possible for someone of my age as a parasocialist. I'm defining myself by genre, if not by reach, as an aspiring member of the online left. And then I say that parasocialist discourse matters, coincidentally implying that I am in some way important. This feels thin. But I take one step back and find myself in a network of people who share a similar disposition, and I'm much less inclined to say that networks are insignificant, even if individual nodes don't count for much. Creators are important in the same way that pieces of thread are important. They're part of a weave. They convey sensation across parts of the world because they're contiguous with everything else in their part of the fabric of society. I am not important. My discourse does not matter. But content creators and audiences connecting on a social network... No! Whoa! Where'd you come from? The doorway. We're shooting more than one location in this video? Yeah, it's counterpoints references all the way down. Never mind that. The point is, there's no virtue in slacktivism. Making culture is not making politics. Posting is not praxis. Anyone arguing that anything happening on the internet is important is engaging in an embarrassing and futile act of self-justification that just isn't fooling anyone. Twitter isn't real life. Politics happens because some people own things and other people don't, and some people try to change that, but most people sit around jerking off. You know what? That's fair, and there are good reasons to hold that opinion. Like, if you do a cursory Google Scholar search for the literature on filter bubbles, rabbit holes, echo chambers, and right-wing radicalization...
The alt-right pipeline. What is this?
You can find meta-studies that say that the alleged effects of all of these things are totally overstated. They just don't exert that much of an effect on society. Like, take this meta-analysis of the social scientific literature on echo chambers, filter bubbles, and polarization in the UK. It suggests that echo chambers are much less widespread than is commonly assumed, finds no support for the filter bubble hypothesis, and offers a very mixed picture on polarization and the role of news and media use in contributing to polarization. Only 6 to 8% of the UK public, the study finds, inhabit politically partisan online news echo chambers. Of course, some people are going to get radicalized spending all their time online, but some people could get radicalized by anything. Most people just aren't that engaged. Okay, but hold on. That 6 to 8% figure. How did they get that? How do you quantify something like discursive political engagement, especially across studies? To begin with, you have to define your terms. The politically partisan online news echo chamber, to take one of the terms from Kathleen Jamieson and Joseph Capella, is a bounded, enclosed media space that has the potential to both magnify the messages delivered within it and insulate them from rebuttal. I have no problem with the second half of that definition, but the first part, the enclosed bounded bit, that's too limited. Echo chambers aspire to be bounded and enclosed media spaces, but they aren't. Like, definitionally. They're connected to everything else on the internet, much of which is implicitly, if not explicitly, political, and the people repeating the same opinions back and forth are connected to everything else in the broader world. Information bounces around echo chambers, inside of filter bubbles, and down rabbit holes, but then it resonates out. Claiming that only 6 to 8% of adults spend a meaningful amount of time in political hug boxes, and that their polarizing effects are therefore overstated, ignores the network effects of political discourse and the total saturation of media and culture by politics. Let me give you an example.
The people out here!
No, not Hassan again. I have to stop using him.
Had long 20 years, over 20 years of fascist dictatorship.
I'm a leftist academic. I pay attention to leftist academics. So, I've been following Clara Mattei. She has this book, The Capital Order, that shows how capitalism uses austerity and fascism to discipline workers, to put the thesis really roughly. It's focused on Italy and England in the interwar years, but you can generalize the analysis.
The best government possible for capitalism is potentially a fascist government.
But I don't have to be a leftist academic to be familiar with Mattei. She's getting her ideas out through a bunch of other channels. Like that clip.
The best government possible for capitalism is a fascist government.
Is from a podcast by one of the Lincoln Project guys. Not exactly a lefty outlet. Not a particularly notable outlet either. I was the 247th view of Mattei's home front interview. But she also talks to people with name recognition. Do you know Brianna Joy Gray?
That came out just a week ago. It's called The Capital Order.
Mattei talked to her twice.
Clara, we talk about fascism a lot.
What about Sam Cedar?
Fiscal austerity is about taxing the poor more than taxing the rich.
Or maybe you're one of those Richard Wolff guys.
Why has this worked as well?
What? Brianna Joy Gray, Sam Cedar, and Richard Wolff don't count as people with name recognition? Well, what about Jon Stewart?
Why are those interventions different? Clara?
Well, I think you really point, John, to your finger to the essence of it all, which is we live in a capitalist economy that by definition...
What about Channel 4?
Welcome to the podcast.
It's such a pleasure.
I mean, how can you escape capitalism?
Mattei is talking to a bunch of different people with a bunch of different audiences, meaning that she's getting her ideas out into a bunch of different parts of the world. It's really cool to see a leftist economist, other than Yanis Varoufakis, getting some recognition, especially since academics tend to be so badly cloistered.
I've been in very critical economic circles for a long time, and I see how academia tends to just really keep the knowledge to itself. A lot of the things we were discussing were not really reaching anyone apart from ourselves, and we were keeping this privilege, which was not only economic, but also intellectual.
And Mattei is just an example of the broader point. She's a cultural vector.
Would that be considered capital and labor? Is that sort of what we're talking about?
Yes, exactly.
You don't have to be a leftist academic to get exposed to the kinds of leftist academic ideas that circulate on social media. You just need to be a fan of someone talking to leftist academics.
Over 407.
Or a fan of theirs.
Yeah, I was hanging out with a bunch of friends of mine. Shouts out to Noah Colwyn, Blowback Podcast.
The man.
Millennial John Stewart, Adam Friedland.
Oh, he's back, the bastard.
Felix Biederman.
The significance of a network isn't in the center, it's in the periphery. It's in the extensions and secondary effects of the network. It's in the interface between different social networks and different media. It's in the ways that people get affected. The logic connecting audiences and content creators to the world of politics is cultural as much as it is socio-technical. People influence one another directly, indirectly, simultaneously, in sequence, across places and times. People influence each other in a lot of different ways. So you're saying you can't put a number on it. The online left has some vague, nebulous effect that you can't point to. Doesn't sound especially rigorous. What if we just looked at some obvious metrics? The left is dying. It's a fraction of the size of the right. If para-socialism is doing anything, it sure isn't winning the culture war. If we want to do something about it, we should put our energies elsewhere. Okay, sure, that's not wrong, but it's only part of the story. The right has a huge claim on the attention economy, but extent isn't the same thing as significance. The success of the right's propaganda is proportionate to the amount that it spends on the culture war. Directly or indirectly, the right funds some of the most popular political content on social media, which illiterate gamers and gullible jocks legitimize, which the lumpen proles consume and talk about, which feeds back into what the content creators talk about and how they talk about it on the platforms that the right owns. And so the right controls the entire media ecosystem. And they're correct to pour billions into propaganda. They have a plan, and they're executing it, and they're winning. Here's the thing, though. I'm not actually convinced that they're winning. They seem desperate. I definitely don't think they're getting their money's worth. Their propaganda is shit, and it seems like more and more people know it. And I think that's in part due to the online left. The left is in a minority position for sure, but that's just because the right has a bigger, blunter logic. The right has quantity. The right's quantitative logic is partly correct. Making media does affect people. Making more media means affecting more people. The problem, McLuhan aside, is that the content of the media does matter. And the content produced by the right is not good.
Matt Walsh is not an interesting guy.
It's actually very, very bad.
His talking points are poorly evidenced and infantile, his delivery is flat and lacking in charisma, and the subjects he covers reveal an embarrassingly narrow perspective of the world. But he is incredibly lucky.
No one gets this across like Jose.
As a fun aside, when I released my video on the Daily Wire's Terror on the Prairie, I put a black bar over Michael Knowles' face in the thumbnail to see if anyone would notice. I didn't see a single comment mention that.
The right's content sucks. It isn't authentic, if that's something content can be. The right is approaching the project instrumentally, so they need to deliver the same message over and over for it to be effective. The left just needs you to hear them once. The right wins on quantity but loses on quality. More media means affecting more people, sure, but you run into some diminishing returns. Better media affect people more profoundly, for a longer period of time, more sincerely, more transformationally. And then these transformed people talk to their friends.
Hi, everybody. My name's Caleb.
You know how this goes.
Welcome to my channel.
There's this kid.
In the second half of the 2000s, I was an edgy teenager.
For whatever reason, he's prone to edginess.
Because I realized it was different to everyone else, and that would make me interesting if I believed all these things, right?
So he's more likely to fall down the rabbit hole.
Because of the benefits that I'd gotten from him and the pain that he had relieved from me.
And he does.
I assumed he was honest. Or at least, at the very least, I assumed that he was correct.
For a while, he becomes a believer.
But something was bugging me about him. Something was wrong. The things
he's given reason to doubt.
So you might be wondering, like, what was the moment? Like, when did it all change? When did the dam break?
Frequently enough, the reason is delivered via YouTube.
I clicked on that video, and I would go as far as saying it changed my life.
He gets de-radicalized.
His entire channel and content just unraveled.
He realizes
I've had my fucking left-wing epiphany, my left-wiffany.
He has a mission.
I couldn't help but think that maybe I should step into the political side of YouTube, since it was so...
These are the most visible examples of a kind of change you typically can't see from the outside.
Having just crawled out of a right-wing rabbit hole, may be falling into a left-wing rabbit hole.
They're an example of a mostly internal process of escape, one that happens to sweep away the social cover on leaving. It's no surprise that this mostly happens to young men.
But we'll get to why. We'll get to why it's specifically young men that are susceptible to things like the alt-right pipeline. We'll get into that, okay? We'll get there.
But what I'm talking about includes everyone. You know about the counter-hegemony argument? The Ernesto Laclau and Chantal Mouffe thing about populistly building socialism from the ideology out? That's the only way I could think about the online left for a long time, as an agent of epistemic change.
The Overton window represents the range of acceptable discourse within any given
You could shift
society.
the Overton window, show people new things,
The privilege of being seen as reasonable and sane.
help them think new thoughts.
RedTube creators are introducing people to very radical ideas.
Change the world. And it does that, I think, but not directly. Counter-hegemony is something you think about in terms of strategy, but I think if you want to explain exactly why and how the propaganda produced by the para-socialists is effective, you also have to think in terms of tactics. I don't know if this is going to come across, but trust me when I say that I think of everything after this point in the script as tactics. Let me tell you about Zizi Papachirisi. She's got this book, Affective Publics: Sentiment, Technology, and Politics. Her broadest argument is that collaborative discourses, by which she means general internet phenomena like hashtags, videos, or images, as well as more specific things like the discourses produced via Twitter, must be interpreted as soft structures of feeling. As structures of feeling, collaborative discourses are collections of sentiments held together by affective glue. People come together in a social network experiencing the same thing in the same way. Parasocialism is one such structure of feeling. It is an impression of its world. It's an index of the world of the online left. This is one thing structures of feeling do. They reflect the world. But they don't just index. They're not purely passive. They're not just symptoms. Structures of feeling don't themselves affect things, not exactly, but they register an incipient effect, which is more significant than it maybe sounds. Papachirisi again.
I borrow the term structures of feeling from Raymond Williams, who employed it in The Long Revolution to describe the potential that lies in that which is emergent in the powers or agency that may derive from the volatility of social experiences in the making.
Structures of feeling work as metaphorical agents to interconnect the world, discursively and substratally. Parasocialism interconnects the online left. Slightly rewriting Papachirisi.
We may understand and further interpret collaborative discourses organized by dirtbag leftists on Twitter as structures of feeling, comprising an organically developed pattern of impulses, restraints, and tonality. Virally circulated breadtube videos and images rendered into socialist memes as they are shared from person to person present structures of feeling. They are organized enough to facilitate sharing, yet open enough to permit differentiated classes of people to locate meaning in them and further infuse them with meaning. They are loosely demonstrative of the mood of the time, or kairos, and, as such, are socially solvent.
Thinking about parasocialism in terms of affective publics reframes the echo chambers, filter bubbles, and rabbit holes of the left as affect mini-worlds. They invite a publicness that is politically sensitized yet generally dismissive of normatively defined political consciousness. They're important because they're separate from the rest of culture while being in continuous critical conversation with it.
But yeah, dude, coming from that, just like seeing that progression of having a Republican Facebook page called Obama's Gay to getting arrested at a Black Lives Matter rally, a lot of YouTube videos.
you buying it? This structure of feeling stuff? I feel like you're not. I wouldn't blame you for accusing me of trying to justify an obviously unhealthy obsession with leftist content by arguing that it's important. I am doing that. This is a motivated argument. But I think the argument is good. No, it's not! Structures of feeling affect many worlds. Counter-hegemony. That's obscurantism. Who cares if an audience indexes a tendency? People can feel things all day long, but none of it matters unless it translates to action. The point of philosophy shouldn't be to interpret the world, but to change it. Okay, fair. I don't disagree. I just think maybe we have a disagreement about how change happens. Think again about the nature of a network. The interconnections, the structure, the rules that govern its use. All of these macro-scale things are important. But they only happen because of the concatenation of individual connections between individual things at the micro scale. The overall structure is an emergent effect of the mechanics of affection. That's another abstract-sounding claim. How exactly does one part of the parasocialist network affect the other parts of the network? And how does this affectivity instigate change beyond the discursive boundaries of the parasocialists? How do you get from consuming content to changing the world? Let's zoom back in on me. I should probably feel more embarrassed to say this than I do. I have been meaningfully radicalized by the online left. Like, not by itself. The thing that's really driven home the horrible truth of the world to me is the genocide in Gaza. I don't think I had a sufficiently skeptical understanding of things before 2023, honestly. At which point I'd been fully embedded in Twitch and YouTube and the wide world of podcasts for at least 3 years. Thanks COVID. By that point, again, embarrassing, I knew what little I did about Israel-Palestine, mostly because I've been watching Hassan covering Al-Aqsa and Sheikh Jarrah and a whole lot more in 2021. I know there are some people my age who get their news from responsible sources, you know, newspapers, independent reporters, alternative media. But I have a habit of going to the professionals second. First I watch Hassan, then I go and read the news. I'm not actually that embarrassed by this. I don't think it's really that shameful a methodology. The online left is a decent place to get your news. It's definitely better than what I used to use. Maybe not better than good alternative media, but much better than mainstream media. Nothing is worse than mainstream media. Around the time that I was listening to Hassan talk about Sheikh Jarrah, I was also listening to Chapo do their thing. They were raising money for Palestinian relief organizations while Felix played video games, and they were also making fun of billionaires for feigning humanity.
They're treating Bill Gates hanging around with this guy who is like a Luciferian figure of unfathomable evil, like he's Ralph Cramden going to the Moose Lodge. And his wife is just waving the rolling pin at him.
But I was also watching debates, I'll admit it. This was around the height of the pandemic, and I was really gorging myself on just the worst media diet, just loads of empty calories. Side note, I think it's notable that there weren't a lot of video essays on Palestine back then. You had Twitch streams and podcasts and debates, but not a lot of video essays. Anyway, in 2021, I was devouring content. It was a mess, not what I'd call clean living, but I felt like I was learning things. I felt like I was arriving somewhere. But I'd had this kind of an experience before. Like, I remember reading people like Noam Chomsky, Eduardo Galeano, Naomi Klein in my undergrad, you know, hearing stories about paramilitary forces decapitating nuns in the Highlands. And I was studying mainstream economics at the same time. I was taking classes where we were told unironically that short-term marginal utility gains were literally the only thing that mattered. But I wasn't a radical then, and I wasn't much of a radical in 2021 either. I wasn't doing a particularly good job of constellating things, to use a Michael Judge verb. There's no particular reason to think that adding in a bunch of edutainment would have pushed me over the edge. But Gaza did, seeing the whole of it in obscene relief. How could it not? Like a bunch of other people, I was radicalized by seeing a genocide broadcast on air, and by being prepared to understand what I was seeing by years spent in more or less ambient exposure to people who know much more than I do. And again, it wasn't just the online left that did this for me. I mentioned having some understanding of imperialism and capitalism in my undergrad, but I didn't think nearly enough about white supremacy or patriarchy until, honestly, too recently. But by 2023, it was easy to understand Gaza as one of the intersections between all of these structures of oppression. And from there, it wasn't much of a leap to starting to think about the current liberal order as the Fourth Reich. So what? You want a prize for realizing that women and people of color exist? And are people? Congratulations for figuring out the basics. I don't know, that seems bad faith. I feel like I've made the point. Parasocialism isn't worth thinking about only because of the effects it has on particular people, any of which could be discarded as insignificant by someone skeptical about significance. Parasocialism is worth thinking about strictly because of the existence of technologically structured social and emotional connections between people. Really think about the world. Mechanically, what is the world but social connections? There is only desire and the social, nothing else. That's from the New Testament. If you're making social connections, you're affecting the world. Fuck it, say it with your chest. Posting is praxis. You can use the master's tools to tear down the master's house. The revolution will be televised. Flip that. Televising it is the revolution. What else are you going to do? Touch grass? Can't be done. The territory no longer precedes the map. There isn't even any difference between the two anymore. The reality principle is just one critique that capital subsumed.
The purpose of their whole production here, all of this, is to eliminate the reality principle.
Capital doesn't care about reality. Fascism scorns facts. They aren't working rationally from program to practice. They're doing something else. You know what my model for the revolution is? Usually when you want to take down an unjust social structure, you want to act like a spoil sport. You want to refuse to play the game. You're only playing a game if you consent to it, so if you withdraw your consent and get others to withdraw it too, you can really slow down a social institution. Sometimes you can get rid of it entirely. But you can't always do this, especially as an individual. Some of the power structures that we live inside of can't be directly attacked. Some are so large or complex as to be incomprehensible. Some are environmental. So what do? You change how you play the game. You don't challenge the legitimacy of the institution. You don't reject the rules. You just choose a different objective.
The artist is now the insider who finds a new style of trifling within the game. The artist as outsider is dead, for there is no outside from which to signal back across the border. The limit to the game has to be found from within.
We're swimming in fish like media swim in water. But we're smart fish. We can think about the water. We just have to spend some time swimming.
If a cheat is someone who ignores the space of a game to cut straight to its objective, and if the spoil sport is someone who refuses to occupy the space at all, then the trifler is someone who ignores the objective to linger within its space.
What are the parasocialists doing but trifling? They're playing the game, they're following the rules, but they're giving themselves different goals.
You do not play the game to win, or not just to win. You trifle with it, playing with the style to understand the game as a form. You trifle with the game to understand the nature of the game space as a world, as the world. You trifle with the game to discover in what way game space falls short of its self-proclaimed perfection.
That's right, I'm making the significance argument on the basis of art and postmodernist neo-Marxism and loitering. Napping is the revolution. The revolution is hanging around. The parasocialists are hanging around. They're trifling with the ludo-capitalist hellscape of social media, which is letting them figure out exactly how it works and where it's vulnerable. And this is where I think my preference for indirect methods is good, actually. If you want to resist more effectively now and in the long term, and we should, then we need to reorient ourselves such that we are completely hostile to the machines that produce reality.
Resist the probability of any image or information whatever. Be more virtual than events themselves. Do not seek to re-establish the truth. We do not have the means. But do not be duped. And to that end, re-immerse the war and all information in the virtuality from whence they come. Turn deterrence back against itself. Be meteorologically sensitive to stupidity.
The online left is sensitive to stupidity. I sure hope someone around here is. They're specifically sensitive to the stupidity of the right. The online left is paying attention to the right, which means people like me can follow the right without actually spending time with the right. That's an invaluable service. Keeping up with what the right is doing and saying takes time and sucks. It's no fun to keep up with Ben Shapiro. It's awful listening to Joe Rogan. That is doing emotional labor. But this relationship means that the online left is defined reactively, in terms of the online right. You can definitely see this with individual content creators. Hassan defines himself in contrast to Ben Shapiro. Stavros Halkias is the Joe Rogan of the left. Everyone's responding to their specific subject. But you can see it from broader perspectives too. Clusters of creators, distinct social networks, are shaping themselves in response to the specific fascists in their social worlds. You have this array of bigotries, endlessly complicated, highly local. The passion for hierarchy is everywhere, and the good online leftist knows their local fascist in grim detail. They're bent over him. It's probably not the healthiest posture. There's definitely a bunch of the bad parts of parasociality at work here. But the flip side of this overfamiliarity is intimacy. The good online leftist knows exactly how to approach, analyze, and present their subject. They really do care, and that makes them effective critics. Certainly more effective than the right.
One thing I noticed that every time I agreed with Ben Shapiro on something, it's when he was saying things people on the left have been saying for years, which honestly speaks to how effective we are at criticizing the right, whether they acknowledge it or not.
The quality of the left's criticism is uneven, for sure. Not everyone is good at what they do, not everyone makes connections. But I think that overall, the parasocialists do a good job of responding to the right. And this is because they are intimately familiar with their sparring partner. The left knows how the right moves. The parasocialists can only respond within the social and technical confines of the here and now, but, weirdly, these same confines give parasocialism its radical potential. Because platforms are, to use an academic word, pharmacons. They cause and they cure. Where you've got writing, you've got potential. The best criticism produced by the online left fulfills this potential. The best criticism shows precisely how people and institutions fit together. I do this gesture all the time in this video. How they fit together in their specificity, and then it shows how things can be different. The obvious way to explain this would be to exemplify it. Show off some great leftist criticism. The best of BreadTube, Hassan's greatest hits. But that would take way too much time, and it's something I'll end up doing in just about every subsequent video anyway. So, one more time, let's get abstract instead. Criticism is the articulation of metaphor. Critics demonstrate how any two things in the world connect. Leftist critics use metaphor to describe particular conjunctions in the structure of feeling that is parasocialism. They can do this critical work because they know how the world works, more or less. They understand general principles and they're familiar with local conditions. They've lingered in their part of the world and spoken to one another about it. And it's not just the creators. The audience are critics too. All the parasocialists are. Watching or listening to criticism helps you learn what criticism is. It helps you understand how two things connect in context and why that makes you righteously angry. It's largely a passive practice, but largely isn't entirely. And in any case, beyond that passive reception is a quiet intellectual activity. And beyond that are the structural effects I talked about when I was defining parasocialism, all of the affective connections that make up the social body. These are all themselves forms of criticism, scalar transformations of collective capacities. Also, criticism is both the prerequisite for and goal of socialism. I don't think it's possible to have good politics unless there's thought behind them. My socialism is one where people can be thoughtful together. To put this concluding point in a more obnoxiously philosophical way, but bear with me one last time, I have a reason for doing this. The parasocialists are re-articulating singularities. They're looking at particular things in the world and recontextualizing them for an audience interested in understanding the mechanics of injustice. And although there are all kinds of different ways that they do this, they all share an ethical concern with singular things in the world that can be reasonably well understood in connection with other singular things. Take once again the example of Gaza. It affected me not only as an abstract, overwhelming totality, but as a succession of singular images of violence that were then recontextualized by the online left. I was putting together singular images with historical explanations for the horrifying status quo, and putting these two things together could only lead to one conclusion. That's why Gaza is so polarizing. Either you've been exposed to the extremely simple, extremely not complicated historical explanation for the current balance of power, or you haven't. Or you have, but you're a fascist. If you take just these two things, a singular image and a well-founded explanation, and you can only get to one conclusion, you sort of have to issue judgment. This is just or unjust. This, Gaza, is unjust. This, the world, is unjust. This is the untelevised part of the revolution.
So the revolution wasn't televised in the 60s. Is it going to be televised in the 90s?
Well, you know, the catchphrase, what that was all about, the revolution will not be televised, that was about the fact that the first change that takes place is in your mind. You have to change your mind before you change the way you live and the way you move. So when we said that the revolution will not be televised, we were saying that, like,
The thing that's going to change people is something that no one will ever be able to capture on film. It'll just be something that you see, and all of a sudden you realize, I'm on the wrong page. Or I'm on the right page, but I'm on the wrong note. And I've got to get in sync with everyone else to understand what's happening in this country.
See? There, you prove my point. The revolution will not be televised. You can't capture the things that will change people on film, let alone the internet. Say, why do you play that clip?
You're missing the point. It's not that media can't change people. It's that you can't see the change from the outside. Radicalization happens first in the mind. And it happens there because of the specific things you see that jar you out of complacency.
Oh, come off it. That's not what he means. You know what? Forget it. Trying to tell me what Gil Scott-Heron means by the revolution won't be televised. Trying to tell me that the online left is not revolutionary.
It's about the specifics. The online left feeds its audience specific examples of broader problems. Gaza is such an example. But the language here is gross because Gaza isn't just an example, it's a singular Holocaust. Every Holocaust is a singular Holocaust. If the parasocialists are doing well, they don't take these things as examples of general patterns. That's the province of the right. They treat them as singularities. No, not that kind of singularity. This kind. Two final singularities. First, logic. Brian Masumi condemns the principle of non-contradiction.
The logic of mutual inclusion provides an alternative to the mutual exclusion practiced by the logic of the general abstract idea, whose categories conform to the logic of classical sets. The principle of non-contradiction at the basis of this logic is disingenuous. It makes it out as if there can be no alternative logic to it, because any logic not obeying its central precept can, from its point of view, only be contradictory or lacking in logic. This is a ruse. Mutual inclusion does not obey the law of non-contradiction, but it is not contradictory. Its logic is otherwise capable of making effective distinctions. In fact, finer distinctions that honor singularity.
Either or produces corpses. Both and produces life. Criticism is one of the tools that allows us to choose between logics. Second, universals. Aimé Césaire resigns from the French Communist Party.
We, men of color, at this precise moment in our historical evolution, have come to grasp in our consciousness the full breadth of our singularity, and are ready to assume on all levels and in all areas the responsibilities that flow from this common consciousness. The singularity of our situation in the world, which cannot be confused with any other. The singularity of our problems, which cannot be reduced to any other problem. The singularity of our history, constructed out of terrible misfortunes that belong to no one else. The singularity of our culture, which we wish to live in a way that is more and more real. What else can be the result of this but that our paths toward the future, all our paths, political as well as cultural, are not yet charted? Provincialism? Not at all. I am not burying myself in a narrow particularism, but neither do I want to lose myself in an emaciated universalism. There are two ways to lose oneself: walled segregation in the particular, or dilution in the universal. My conception of the universal is that of a universal enriched by all that is particular, a universal enriched by every particular, the deepening and coexistence of all particulars.
Socialism is a universal that can accommodate singularity. Para-socialism is how we post our way there.
That's it. We're done. Was that a good note to end on? Was that disappointing? Too abstract? I'm going to come back to all that stuff. I'm going to come back to all that stuff and all kinds of things that I want to do. I want to do some things. I got some plans, got some ideas for things I could do, some future videos. So the thing is, this is part of a big research project, and I got a book coming out about it. It's called The Parasocialists, available on fine open source websites everywhere from Punctum Books, hopefully this summertime. We'll see. And it's going to cover similar kind of territory to what I covered in the video, but at length and in a different medium. And meanwhile, in this medium, I want to take some of the basic ideas that I put together when I was writing that book and expand on them. Because a lot of the stuff that I've been doing here is expanding on that stuff, and I plan on doing more of that in the near future in a bunch of different directions. And this is where I'm really excited. Really excited. This is fun. Everyone tells me that this is fun. Well, the internet tells me that this is fun. I'm really enjoying myself. This is so much more fun than just writing books and articles and stuff that no one reads. It's great making things. So, ideas. I want to make some videos on a bunch of different people that I think are in the online left, adjacent to the online left, part of the online left in some capacity. And I'm going to be stretching because, eventually you want to make videos about whatever you want to make. You do one of these things a year, apparently. You may as well make use of it and enjoy yourself. So probably, anyway, we're going to be doing some videos about some video games. I think you got some video game references in there. I got some thoughts about Slay the Spire. I got some thoughts about criticism, meta-commentary, and Slay the Spire. I've got some thoughts about the blueprints. Blueprints, pardon me. Not the blueprints, I don't believe. Liberalism. The Fourth Reich, the political compass, and political theory. These are different video topics that might or might not be the same video topic. Some long-form stuff I want to think about, the kinds of claims that CJ the X makes with regard to long-form content. I want to think about Tim Rogers in particular and the video game world. Disco Elysium is kind of the thing that's letting me connect to the world of video games via the online left, by the way. Did I say Terry Pratchett already? Supergiant Games? Yeah. ContraPoints. I got some thoughts about ContraPoints. Anyway, let's make some videos. Also, I want to do some interviews. Probably not so much formal academic interviews as more the kind of thing that FD Signifier does in his videos. I really appreciate that approach. And if you are out there and in the online left, you want to talk to me, get in touch. I'll figure out a way to put contact info somewhere.
and maybe we can have a conversation about this stuff. I want to keep thinking about this in a, kind of rigorous way, in a critical way. Look forward to the critical comments. Bring them. I'm very happy to chat with you in the comment section. Tell me what you like, tell me what you didn't like, tell me what you want more of. Do I need more thorough citations? Less? Are you okay with the academies? That's kind of what I'm going to do, I think. So hopefully you're fine with it. Like, comment, and subscribe.